Doug Voluntaryist, and this is my first ever broadcast on the Voluntary Virtues Network. I'm really excited. This is kind of a continuation from a series I was doing over at Podomatic. It was an audio-only series called The Drive-By Commentary with Doug Voluntaryist. So I'm kind of just sort of continuing that, although I'm not driving, clearly. The idea is I was inspired by Stefan Molyneux's podcast that he was doing while he was in his car, and I was kind of doing that similar kind of thing for a while. But right now, I've decided that it's better to get the information out. And of course, one of the things that I found that while driving and trying to talk at the same time is a little bit difficult. So, because something happens and you get derailed, and I have notes I can look at, and so this is probably an easier form for me. Now, I don't have any guests this time. At some point, I'll probably do that, and then, we'll have some interesting debates. But right now, this is just, I've made a list of the things that I've noticed over the last few days, a week or so, and I want to make some comments about them, have some discussions. Let me get down to brass tacks here. I live in the People's Republic of California. I mean the state of California. The criminal gang known as the state of California. And they have what's called Proposition 65, which is it was initially created to warn people about the contents of the drinking water. Well, somehow it morphed and it spread. Its application was much bigger than just drinking water. It's supposed to warn everybody about about toxins in everyday products, including food, right? Well, this is how useful this proposition is. I have a product that I buy and actually sell. If you're interested, contact me offline. I can get you some. But it's called Shakeology, and it's got a bunch of superfoods in it. It's chocolate flavored, but there's no sugar in it. It's flavored with stevia. It gives you a little bit of sweetness, and it's a great power drink. Something you can replace a meal with, basically. So it's good for weight loss. It's good for energy. It's good for your body in general. So here's what I found in my package, and this is fairly recent. This wonderful Prop 65 warning. This product contains lead and other chemicals known to the state of California to cause cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harm. What? Holy crap, I've been drinking this shit. Let me read what they say. And this is from the Beachbody Corporation. I feel sorry for them because they were forced by the regulators to put this shit in their product. Now they explain it. Proposition 65 is the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act of 1986. It was enacted to protect California consumers and inform them about the contents in the public drinking water supply. The breach of Prop 65, however, extends to many other businesses as it covers heavy metals, chemicals, and other elements which are found in trace amounts in countless consumer products, including various foods, jewelry, fish, clothing, and glassware. In fact, you will see the same notice posted in many building lobbies, grocery stores, parking lots, shopping malls, and even when you are shopping for a watch or new dishes. Trace amounts of lead listed under California's Proposition 65 are found in some of even the most carefully selected and sourced ingredients contained in Beachbody supplements. Lead is a naturally occurring element that is found throughout the entire environment, including soils, where it can be taken up by natural plants and herbs all over the world. None of these elements are added by Beachbody, which follows good manufacturing practices to minimize or eliminate any contamination. Like many other companies that provide supplements, Beachbody must provide a California Proposition 65 warning to its California customers concerning any listed elements that occur in its products to comply with the law. The law is completely pointless because these are naturally occurring elements. They're in everything. What's the point of warning people that's got lead in it when everything has lead in it? Trace amounts are tolerable. There's arsenic in a lot of things too, in trace amounts. So this is where you see we have a nanny state, particularly in California. They're going to protect everybody from all of these bad, evil people that are going to poison them in their food supply. But in reality, I believe that the state just kind of resurrected or just kind of constructed a scapegoat. And it's called freedom. And they don't like freedom. They don't like They want to be in control of it, and they want to appear relevant to everybody. So they come up with junk like this. And I can understand a law that was surrounding the drinking water, which is pretty much produced by government facilities. That I can get. Having them spill over into the private sector is ridiculous. Now, the thing about it is you say, well, who's going to regulate the food supply and make sure that we're not poisoned by evil manufacturers that don't care about standards, that lie about what's on their products just so they can make a buck? Right? Well, again, if we're going to go with the theme of this network, it's voluntary virtues. What does it mean? It means voluntaryism. Right? What does voluntaryism mean? It means that we are a group of people that believe that the initiation of aggression is immoral. It's wrong. It doesn't serve society. Okay? It's bad. It's coercion. We don't want coercion. Do you want coercion in your life? If you think about it, you probably don't. You probably don't like being told what to do. You probably don't want someone to stick a gun in your face and take your money from you. You probably don't like coercion. You probably like peaceful coexistence and peaceful transactions. That's what the voluntarist is all about. That's the society that we want. In a freed society, there would be no Proposition 65. What would happen is you would have certification programs, and such programs exist now. For example, even though it's religious, and I don't mean to appeal to religion, but it's an example of a voluntary certification, kosher. If you've ever looked into the kosher label, it's pretty interesting stuff. Basically, there's certain foods that, if you know anything about Judaism, and I'm not a practicing Jew, so forgive me if I've screwed something up, but as I understand it, there are certain foods that the Jewish religion forbids. So if you're an Orthodox Jew, then you can't eat pork and you can't eat shellfish, and there's certain things, right? The priest comes into a kosher facility and actually looks at the food being put into the product, looks at the ingredients, carefully scrutinizes them, makes sure that they pass, that they're consistent with Jewish law, and that it will meet the Jewish dietary requirements. Well, a lot of non-Jews like kosher because it's an extremely rigid system, and the rabbi just won't give his blessing unless it's right. So there are many different things that Jews are prohibited from eating, and they have to make sure that that stuff isn't in the food that they eat. So they absolutely have to have rigid certification. They can't. No law was ever passed for this. They didn't need a law. Right? The Jews wanted this. They invented the system called kosher. Companies, and there are companies out there that certify kosher. That's their business. If you say, I want to put kosher on my label, you go to a certification company and you pay them and they certify you. And if you don't have the right stuff, or you're trying to get something past them, they'll ding you and say, no, you can't have our label. We have a reputation to uphold. If we put our label on your product and we're lying, we get in trouble. You see, we lose business because the kosher community wants kosher food. Right? So it would be no different. Without the state, people think the state takes care of this stuff. They don't. You'll have certification companies that do this. Even the organic standard is certified by, I believe it's a nonprofit, Quality International. I believe is what it's called, Quality Assurance International. The electrical appliances are certified by Underwriters Laboratories. There's no government regulation necessary to make sure that these things are safe. So, what kind of world do you want to live in? One with, the Gestapo has got a gun? And there's many different reasons why this regulation is a bad idea. Because what they're doing is they're telling you, or what they're doing is they're looking at companies that manufacture products, and they're saying, oh, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. We suspect you of putting crap in the food. Prove that you're not doing it. And you see this is completely 180 degrees on its head from American jurisprudence. As screwed up as our government court system is, it still is based on those fundamental concepts, those fundamental ideas. But the point is that when I say to the statist, hey, we ought not have Proposition 65, they'll say, oh, you want lead, no water supply. No, I don't. But this isn't the way to do it. Clearly, it's not the way to do it. Look at the overreach. Look how they screwed it up. Like I said, if you want the government to regulate stuff, you want the government to protect you. Look at how the federal government is protecting us from terrorists in the airports. You got to take off your shoes just to get through the security. It's ridiculous. They'll take away your nail clippers. They once did that to a pilot. That's a story I heard. It was really funny. And the pilot said, look, I fly the damn plane. Well, we can't let you take those nail clippers in. Why? You might take over the plane. I'm flying the plane. That's the dumbest thing ever. Anyway, so let's move on. Regulation. The roads of America, I read a statistic, was something like 40,000 deaths per year. And Walter Block quoted this statistic in one of his lectures. 40,000 people die on American roadways a year. Now, that's a pretty bad statistic. I believe that it's the fault of free roads being given away by the government. In other words, paid for by taxes. So everybody can drive on these roads, and they have a tragedy of the common situation. They're extremely dangerous. And their rules, the rules that they invented to try to make the roadway safer, are actually making the roads dangerous. There's if you Google controlled chaos, I'll make sure the link is in the notes. Controlled chaos, you'll find a link about in Europe what they did, and they wanted to know what causes road rage. Well, they said it was the rules of the road that causes road rage. The psychologist, that's their conclusion they came to. They said get rid of lane markers. Lane markers. They said get rid of stop signs, get rid of signs that give you directions, get rid of traffic signals, take away the Gestapo gives out traffic tickets for going over some arbitrary number. Get rid of all that. And there are some cities that actually did that, and they met with a lot of success, and the roads are actually safer. Well, another answer to this problem, and this is what I love about the market, even a rigged market like what we have today, there's still enough freedom in there so people can come up with creative solutions to these kinds of problems. And that's, I give you the Google car. And if you've ever heard about the Google car, it is a self-driving vehicle. And you think, how the heck can they possibly do that? Well, the Google car basically has instruments built onto it. I mean, it's kind of a funny looking car, but then again, it is in prototype stage. The Google car has instruments built onto it such that it can scan the area that it's going through, and it can sense cars in front of it. It can sense traffic issues. It can sense traffic signals. It can look for road signs. It uses GPS, and basically, it just you climb into the car and you punch in where you want to go, and you sit back. You can read a book. Even a kid could drive a Google car because you're not really doing anything, right? The car's doing everything for you. You think, wow, well, what happens if the thing malfunctions? Well, the fact is they've been running this thing in beta for years now, as I understand it, and it has an excellent track record. The only accidents the Google car's ever been in has been the fault of the other drivers. See, my point is with this is that the car like this, you've solved the horrendous fatality problem on the roadways when you get these cars in the hands of millions of drivers. Honestly, I would love to have something like this because I commute to work every day, and I would rather read a technical manual or a book, or I would rather program, or I'd do a million different things than sit there and have to stare at the road. I mean, I invented drive-by commentary to try to abate that boredom. Well, now I could use that time to do a million other things and be far more productive. So now what we have here is we have the market answering a problem, coming to the rescue basically, and solving a problem that, ironically, government created in the first place. We have to understand what happens when we turn to the government to solve our problems. Okay? You're bringing in a violent solution. And this is something that statists don't understand and they don't get. This is an axiom, and it's 100% true. under every law is a gun. In other words, every law is backed by force, okay? By the threat of violent force. And I don't care if it's a traffic ticket or if it's laws against murder. They're all backed by force. Every law is a gun, okay? So what you're saying is when you say the government ought to solve X, Y, and Z, ought to address this problem, you're necessarily saying that you ought to settle it violently. The government only has one tool, and that's violence, you know, a hammer, right? And every problem looks like a nail. So I was debating with somebody who said, we were talking about gun control, and she said, well, no one is suggesting that guns be confiscated by force. That's not on the table and probably won't ever be. Regulation isn't the same as confiscation. I said, well, the problem is that, yes, it is about confiscation. Just like prescription drugs are about confiscation and deprivation, right? So if you buy prescription drugs, but you don't do it right, you don't get a note from your doctor, you somehow go through a back end, they'll come and take your drugs away from you, right? They may even put you in jail for it. They'll certainly fine you, right? So it's about force. Same thing with guns. If I go and buy a black market gun in an area where guns have been prohibited, we'll say, I'm looking at some serious trouble if they catch me, right? They will use violence, right? So, and of course this gets into the whole debate about gun control anyway. I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down, which I think we don't have a lot of time now, so I'll have to just kind of keep going. But what I wanted to say about the entire concept of the way our law is in this country, I want to read an excerpt from Market for Liberty by Morris and Linda Tannehill. And I think this just really sums it up very nicely. Throughout history, the means of dealing with aggression, crime, has been punishment. Traditionally, it has been held that when a man commits a crime against society, the government, acting as the agent of society, must punish him. It's always about punishment. However, because punishment has not been based on the principle of righting the wrong, but only of causing the criminal to undergo pain, loss, or suffering, it is actually about revenge. Okay? And every time I see it, oh, we need justice. No, you want revenge. I want to see that guy swing. You want revenge. Well, that son of a bitch shot up those children at that school. He ought to hang. You want revenge. What the voluntarist says is that revenge is not necessarily what we should be looking for. That a free society might handle this sort of thing a lot differently. One is restitution, and if you look into medieval Iceland, everything was restitution based. I think we need to really seriously rethink what our law is doing, what our government is doing, and if we really want revenge in our society, because it isn't about justice. They do nothing at all for the victim or the victim's family. If you throw a guy in jail for 20 years for murder, how does that bring back the dead? How does that help the families, the family of the victim? It doesn't help them at all. The cold comfort they get is, well, he went to jail. That's not justice. Right? That doesn't really do anything for them. The thief, what do? We put the guy in jail. How about return the stolen property and have him pay extra for any other circumstantial damage that he, like for example, loss of income and these sorts of things? What about that? So that's a topic we can cover later on. Anyway, the book that I have here is called Anarchy and the Law: The Political Economy of Choice. It's a really good book, and it's chock full of these kinds of essays, and even some criticisms. There's like a conversation, a debate section. So it's a very good book. It's by Edward P. Stringham. So when we talk about matters of government, when we talk about what it is an institution, it's all based on coercion. Well, I will often say that government is actually a form of slavery. Now, statists will recoil in righteous indignation and horror when I make this comparison, and when I say that it's actually slavery. Well, I'm not comparing it to chattel slavery, and there is a difference. Okay, when I use the word slavery, okay, chattel slavery is the extreme. We're talking about chattel slavery in southern United States during the Civil War and during the 19th century was all about blacks having absolutely no rights. They were treated like cattle. Okay, this is the extreme. They were beaten. They had no rights whatsoever. However, slavery itself, the concept of slavery, is being forced to work for somebody against your will. That really is what slavery is. Slavery is the ability to control somebody and treat them as property, to control their disposition. Okay? Well, the government controls our disposition. The government tells us we must pay taxes. If we do not pay taxes, they throw us in jail. If we break any of their myriad of victimless crime laws, we go to jail. They tell us what to do, just like the master tells the slave what to do. Yeah, we have more freedom than chattel slaves, but it is a difference in degree, not of type. And this is something that the statist must reconcile with, must come to grips with. And at some point I had to, and you will too. If you're watching this and you're skeptical and you're saying, how dare you say that? Eventually, at some point, you'll be intellectually honest with yourself, and you'll realize that I'm right about this, that this is not the way to treat people. And the anger part that I get when I make that kind of comparison is one of what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross called the 5 stages of grief. And the 5 stages of grief go like this, but not necessarily in this order. There's anger, or there's denial, there's anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Acceptance is always the last stage. So when, unfortunately, when people get fatal diseases and they go through these 5 stages of grief, well, it's very similar when talking to somebody about government when we present them with the voluntarist view. Because the voluntarist view is an anarchist view. We say we don't want government. Government is actually really... And, of course, they'll go through these various stages. First, there's denial. For example, when I say under every law is a gun, it's violence. They will deny that. Oh, no, it's not violence. It's not violent. As long as you obey the officer, it's fine. There's no violence at all. Right? And of course, I mean, it's easy to show why that's bunk. If you are in an area controlled by the mafia and you are paying protection money, we'll say, right? What happens if you stop paying the protection money? You know what'll happen. Your legs get broken. You'll be sleeping with the fishes, right? So, yeah, if you pay your protection money, there's no violence. But it still is violent. It still is violent because the mafia will break your legs if you don't comply. Well, it's the same thing with the government. If you don't comply with their laws, if you don't pay taxes, you'll go to prison. Right? And those men and women with guns at some point will come and take you away. So we get denial, right? Then we get the anger, right? So that's usually like, well, if you don't like it, you can leave, and you're selfish, and it's always that's where the ad hominem comes from. They are angry at you, right? So they figure, shooting the messenger ought to fix this. Bargaining, and it's funny is the bargaining stage usually comes about when they realize that you're correct about statism being just not different at all from slavery. They begin to bargain. Right? Usually they'll come in form of consequentialist arguments. Well, we had to do this awful thing so that we could get a good thing. We had to go and violently take people's guns away because there was this shooting and this mass shooting because people could buy guns and mentally ill people could just go down to the store and buy. So we have to go and punish the people that haven't harmed anybody. It's one of those things, it's just what you have to do. Sorry. So that's like what you would call so that's like bargaining. I had one person actually say, please don't think of tax as theft. I mean, she begged me, please, will you just change your mind about taxation? It isn't theft, please. It was just amazing. It was remarkable. And what it came down to, what it came down to is that she felt guilty for having gotten an education on the public's dime. And by me saying, no, I'm sorry, it's theft, she had to face the fact that she got away with something that was really awful. She benefited from stolen money. Nobody wants that on their conscience, right? Well, normal people like you and I don't. And then, of course, there's depression. And I had one of my statist friends, I finally got through to him. I showed him why taxation was just really it's legalized extortion. It's theft. It's criminal. And well, of course, he works for the government. He said, well, what do you want me to do? Slit my wrists? Should I just go kill myself? Oh my God. Right? Because then you realize, oh crap. Well, when you get to that fifth stage, the acceptance, it's actually a beautiful thing. And sounding a bit like Jeffrey Tucker now. That you realize it's liberating to know the truth. So when you let all this stuff go, when you stop fighting reality and fighting, oh, it has to be this way because I was taught that the state is this way. I work for the government. It has to be good. And when you realize, no, it's not, to me, it's enlightening and it's liberating. And you realize, oh, everything starts to make sense now. It never made sense before. If government is run through the consent of the governed, how are all of these horrible abuses going on? People getting thrown in jail for things that, like Bernard von Nothaus wanted to try to help by creating the Liberty Dollar. He winds up in jail for 30 years. The man's an old man. He's going to die in jail. For what? Who did he hurt? He didn't hurt anyone. Wait a minute, I thought the government was there to stop people from hurting others. They're not. The Supreme Court has said so on many other occasions. So this is what we're looking at. This is the situation that we're in. This is the universe that we live in. You can be angry about it. You can deny it. You can bargain away. You can be depressed. None of that's going to change reality. Why not accept it? And then the more people we get to accept reality, the closer we'll get to actually solving this problem, because the only way that we're ever going to beat the behemoth that is government, the only way that the Leviathan gets defeated is to not fight. It's to let it go. It's to say, all right, you're not our government anymore. We don't obey you anymore. We don't do what you say. We don't pay you money anymore. I'm not owned by you. I'm done. And if you just say that in your mind, even though, yeah, okay, well, you pay some taxes and things like that so that you avoid the trouble of the state, you've already changed your mind, and as you change your mind, you get the next person to change your mind, and pretty soon the government has absolutely no power. Because remember that power is never taken, it's only ever given. So basically, one of the things that I think is going to bring us to this is a program called Made Safe. And it's not really a program, it's an architecture, but it's an organization that's come up with this architecture. And as I understand it, it's based kind of on the Bitcoin architecture. Bitcoin is something that's completely decentralized. And it has a ledger, but it's a public ledger. Everybody has a copy of it. There's no central organization that can control Bitcoin and shut it down. All right? It's impossible. You have to shut down the internet to shut down Bitcoin. Made Safe is built on a similar system, but it's not just for coins. It's not just for commerce. It's for anything. It's for data. It's for social networking sites. This is sort of what they call an API for programmers, and it's big. And when this takes off, this is going to be the wave of the future. You're tired of Facebook turning over your files to the NSA? That won't happen anymore, because with Made Safe, everything's encrypted and everything's decentralized. The government cannot pull the plug on something like this. This is how tyranny loses its grip. To quote Star Wars, the more you tighten your grip, Governor Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. And that's what we're looking at. And that's how we get free. Now, and please stay tuned to the Voluntarist Virtues Network. Got a lot of great material that Michael has put on here. It's amazing. And I think you're really going to enjoy the offerings here. So until the next time, stay safe and stay free.